All right, welcome everybody to this special presentation here with my new friend, Corey Hayes. She is the owner of Connected Gardener and becoming one of my besties. We're in communication all the time, but we are really focusing on our Anderson Kitchen Garden. Today, we have the treat of being able to learn more about getting started with our garden, raised kitchen beds, seasonal planting, and really just to gain more insight into some of the maybe top mistakes that people are making, but also how they can really show up no matter what season of life and no matter what level of expertise that they have going into a project like this, and really have Corey by your side to help you navigate the entire thing. So Corey, thank you so much for being here
Thank
and
you for
tell me a
having
little,
me.
yeah, you can give us a little brief overview on like kind of what brought you to the Connected Gardener and how it bloomed.
Well, my mom was a big gardener. She had a beautiful garden that she started when I was in college, and I started getting interested then. But really, it didn't start all overnight. I was home with little ones, and then I was a high school English teacher for 7 years and had summers off. And that was a game changer for me because that gave me time to just get out there and dig in the garden and in the dirt. And we had a new home that needed a lot of landscaping. And so I got really into it. And then I transitioned into a career in real estate where my busy season was spring and summer, and I didn't have the time and the energy to put into gardening anymore, and I missed it so much. Um, Got to learn a lot of great things and be in a lot of beautiful places, but I missed that. And so after our first grandson was born in 2022, my heart was kind of starting to feel like I was ready for something different, and I tried a couple administrative roles, and sitting at that desk all day was draining. And I felt like I needed something else. I needed some vital connections had been lost in my life that I wasn't sure what I needed, but I knew I needed movement. I needed better nutrition, which is right up your alley. And I needed it to be purposeful. Like I wanted it to be purposeful movement, not just going to the gym and, getting on the treadmill, but I wanted to be an active person who was out in the sunlight and connecting with the earth and barefoot on the grass and, the grounding and so it really, a lot of the Connected Gardener really came out of my own desire for my own reconnection with the earth and with God and with food and with movement and the healthy rhythms that come through living outdoors and being connected to where our food comes from and what's how it's been grown and all of those things. And so I quit that desk job and started Connected Gardener.
And you can really see that that theme between everything you've said, the connected, like that the name of your business is so fitting. Getting back into connecting with nature, connecting with yourself, connecting with God, connecting with the way that we nourish our bodies. I mean, it's so important. And I love that you tied that into your business name and business model. It's like your vision and your mission all at the same time.
That's right.
And now, actually, just as we were speaking, we were getting our soil delivered. So,
Ah,
as we're talking about this for our
yay.
project, our kitchen garden project, we just had some soil delivered. We just had our gravel delivered on Friday. So we are like getting up and running. And Corey has been our lead in our project and really creating this beautiful, massive undertaking. Really was definitely more, probably from the DIY side than we thought it was going to be. So Corey has an amazing team that actually helps when she gets the design process going and the implementation. Her team then takes that and be able to come into your house and just like execute it, get it done. Right now it's between my husband and I, more so like I'm 10% husband, 90%. But we each have our roles. So it's going to be great. It's going to be beautiful. It's been a wonderful project, a wonderful learning process, really. And of course, it's always been a joy connecting with you every step of the way, Corey. So if you can tell us a little bit more about maybe some of the common, we'll kind of go on the negative side, but with the common mistakes that people make or a common negative mindset that they might have when they're thinking about gardening, when, oh my gosh, like that's intense or it's intimidating, or I only get my stuff from the store, I don't even know how to begin. Maybe what are some of your tips and tricks for that? body comp?
Oh, that's a great question because, I hear people say, "Oh, I tried it and it didn't work." Or I have a brown thumb, I just can't, I kill everything I try. Have you heard that?
Makes me like, I have the blackest thumb you'll see.
No, there aren't. No, it's just knowledge and having proper support. And growing plants and growing vegetables is literally the most natural thing I mean, it's okay, so it's reproduction.
Yep,
So having babies or, growing food, these are things that most people, we're all designed for. So
need to have the
anyway,
knowledge. So many people don't. We need to have the knowledge to be able to grow. Like imagine something just a truck didn't make it, grocery stores all closed down, there was a, apocalypse. Like, right, we need
well, we kind of had a little taste, right, of moments of feeling like, ooh, I never could imagine that happening, but now I could kind of imagine that happening. Even I mean, COVID aside, we've seen some just really horrible natural disasters come through, and sometimes, there's the concept of saving everything up and homesteading, which is great. That's not really what I teach. I'm much more of a suburban gardener, or like I'm helping people who want to just supplement their food. But I think that there's that vital connection, back to the word connection, of knowing how you could do it. So, like, if you had to grow your food, you'd kind of have an idea of how to do it.
right.
You wouldn't be terrified. Some people, I mean, I've talked to some people and I think they think that eggs come from a store, and or that carrots come from a store, and they'll, think, oh, it's dirty. I don't want to eat it. Well, it all grows in dirt, and we wash it off and we eat it. But there are some things that we've become so separated
Yeah.
from the earth and the good things that were created for our good, that I want to just get people back in and playing and feeling like they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to, there's no perfection in a garden. There's no perfection in life, but there are rhythms, and there's experimenting. And some years there are bumper crops where things just take off and go awesome, and sometimes there are bummer crops, where there are storms of life, storms of real actual weather storms like hail or surprising weather that can take out a crop. But as you like, that doesn't mean you don't do it.
Right. Such a
That
good
means you do
analogy.
it again
Maybe over and
because
keep pursuing forward.
you
Have to.
keep moving forward, and is always something beautiful that comes out of those seasons. So moving into that, and it doesn't happen overnight, right? Like, I didn't just start this business and go, "Oh, I'm all connected now." I have I have my own things. No, it's not like that. It's moving in that direction, and that's what I love to share with people, is that if they're kind of longing for those connections, gardening is just an amazing way to do that, to start building those habits in, and with the right information and with the right support and with some community, everybody can do this. I truly believe everybody can do this. I believe we were made to do this. So that's probably what I would say to that myth. And then the other one would be, that you have to have uh, you have to have raised beds, or you have to have like this big, elaborate, expensive setup. You know what? That raised beds are amazing because you can control the soil and you can control a lot of things. They need less watering, they need less weeding, they need less nutrients. Your soil is better. You don't have to fertilize the same way. Raised beds are amazing, but food grows in the ground too. And they grow in little containers, and they grow, I don't like to use plastic, but some people get started because that's all they've got to get started with, and they're starting in a plastic container. And so rather than looking, some people will say, oh, I don't have enough sun. Well, if you have 3 hours of sun, you've got enough to grow lettuce. And that's probably the best, one of the best crops to grow, right? I mean, we get all of our lettuce from these plastic tubs that have been hauled across from who knows where, probably, from California on a truck weeks ago and sprayed with whatever to get it to us.
Mhm.
So to be able to just grow lettuce and you've got 3 hours and you've got a little corner of a patio, you're good to go.
Yeah. And speaking of that too, I think a lot of people would also say like, what if I don't have enough space? And you just alluded to the fact of being able to do in those little, separate containers. But let's say if somebody does want to do a project, or maybe they live in an apartment, or maybe they live in a townhouse where they only get maybe a little bit of space.
Yeah.
What's your experience in working with maybe some of those smaller projects? And then we'll kind of go to a project like what we're doing, which is a, like a large scale type of project over here.
Right.
We're going big. This is what we do. So if you can talk to like kind of both ends of the spectrum.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's so fun because both are amazing. And so let's say you just have that little tiny space. If you've got 3 hours of sunlight and you've got room for a two, like a little, one of those little whiskey barrels, the half barrels you can grow. Or actually, what I really love is those galvanized metal tubs that you can get at Home Depot. And yes, and drill some drainage holes and you fill them up with really great soil. And I can share a soil mix with your clients and, with your community if they're interested.
Absolutely. If
So
you guys are interested, just put comment soil, like soil question, or however you want to.
yes, yeah. If anybody has questions about any of these things and wants me to get back to give them a little bit more information, I can set up a discovery chat, just like a 15-minute call with any of your community. I would love to chat and talk about whether it's like soil or a small area or whatever. So, but yeah, I mean, you just get that little container and you put in your good soil and you can just get some go to Trader Joe's and get some little plant starts and do an herb garden. Herbs do great. There are leaves, roots, and fruits. And so your leaf crops like salad, lettuces, and leafy greens and herbs need about 3 to 4 hours of sunlight per day. They really grow well in the cool season. So in the middle of the summer, it's a little too hot, but they do great. Herbs will go through the summer, lettuces and leafy greens, kind of like it a little cooler. But you can grow that right there on your patio, your balcony. My daughter and her new husband are putting in their first little garden out on their little apartment balcony in the next couple of weeks, and it's so exciting.
Oh, that's great. So no matter how small, how big, you can make it work, make it happen for your area. And our project, give you a little insight. I've been trying to post a little bit on this, and we're doing 8 large 3 by 8 feet. They're galvanized metal stock tanks. And those are going to be filled with, we're going to have some sweet potatoes, we're going to have onions. And Corey and I have been talking about how we're going to plan each of these and make sure that with the seasons, we are being aware of the temperatures and the sun and the angle of the sun and where it is on our property and all of those things that are really important. Maybe you can kind of talk a little bit to the seasonal planting. I know you've got a great
Sure.
free resource for people on this. So the
Yes.
seasonal planting piece and kind of what people, kind of what to have in their minds because we always hear, like you and I've talked about this before, Corey, is we always hear people say like, oh, wait until after Mother's Day to plant. And there's more opportunities earlier before that, even germinating, like getting the seeds started indoors over the winter time. And of course, now where we are right in at the time of this filming, we're on April 14th. So we're right, at that prime time for a lot of the spring crops to go in,
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
long as we've got the plants established by this point and making sure that we're paying attention to the weather.
And even seeds, we're going to plant some seeds in your garden next Saturday. And because certain crops really prefer to go in as a seed, they don't like to be transplanted. They're kind of finicky that way. So I'm going to be teaching you which ones go in and as a transplant and which ones go in as seed. And we still have time to get our spring crops in. Where our spring crops probably could have started March 1st if we were all ready to go and had plants to go. A lot of the garden centers in the Chicagoland area are just getting their stuff out. I've been looking for some plants, and some of what I'm looking for is out there. Some of what I'm looking for isn't quite there because most people think they can't garden yet. And that's not true. So this is a great time. In fact, there are a couple of crops that we're already past. Uh, like if we wanted to get a really good cabbage,
Mm,
we needed to get that in at the end of February
mm,
before it gets to be too hot to grow that cabbage in the summer. Cilantro. I know you don't like cilantro, but I love cilantro, and a lot of people do. And so if you're on Team Cilantro, um, that is a spring and a fall crop. It likes the cooler temperatures. And once it gets to June, it bolts, which means that it flowers, and then the seeds grow, which is part of the natural growing cycle. And if you wanted to produce seeds, that would be great. But if you want to eat cilantro or dill, or some of these other leafy greens that like the cool season, and when I say cool, I mean from like 34 degrees,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
34.
Like, what do you do then? Are you covering them or are you?
Yeah, at that point, I would use frost cloths because that is really pretty cold, but plants can start growing and do really well um, at that time, especially if you're keeping an eye. You don't want them to, some plants, would not handle freezing completely,
Mm,
a hard freeze, but like lacinato kale tastes better after a hard freeze.
mm,
It's sweeter.
mm.
So if you let it grow through the winter, I mean, through the summer, the leaves are tough and
Yeah.
they're thick and they're
Yes.
not quite as tasty, but your kale that is grown in the spring and in the fall is so sweet and so much better.
Yeah, I've actually
So
seen that a lot. Like I've definitely experienced that with my kale. It was very hard and rough when it got to be in those hotter climates.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and kale will summer through, kind of soldiers through. In fact, it's a biennial that can actually grow 2 years. Through for the full life cycle. But that's not how I teach to grow usually because it's that's like that would be like a different goal than most suburban farmers
Mm.
or gardeners, not even farmers, like suburban gardeners who are just wanting a kitchen garden to go out and be able to grab some healthy
Yep.
salad for their plate, or to throw in their omelet, or to have their own herbs. I mean, the herbs from the store, how old are they? I mean, I
Yeah.
don't even.
Well, and
And
to your point there too, as far as nutritional benefit, I'm always telling people like when you grow your own food, the closest that you have to the root, to the stem, to the seed like of the plant is going to be the most nutritious. It's like think about babies versus, again, not to throw anybody under the bus, but like the nutrition, the life,
yeah,
the nourishment that we get from those plants when they're closest to their source is going to be far greater than having it, rest or sit in a truck for weeks on end. And then by the time it actually gets to us, there's actually a really good stat. You've probably heard this too, is the apples that we eat are about 6 months old. They've been picked, unless you're going to, an apple orchard, local apple orchard, you're getting apples that are likely 6 months old because they have been stored in, facility. And of course, you can get into the oxygen conversation, but all that to say is like if you grow your own things and you're going to be getting the best nutrition, you're going to be healthier. Your family
absolutely.
connected and healthier. You're going to have less, lower grocery shopping bills because you're not going to have to be spending that money there. So, like you said, it's uncomparable. The taste
Yeah,
like a tomato, a cherry tomato at the store versus what you're planting, at your home. And from the herb standpoint, which I've never been super successful with my herbs, they tend to die. But I'm going to learn to be successful with my herbs.
you are going to learn because, and yeah, I mean, there are all these different components to it, but you're right, Ashley. First of all, price per ounce, you cannot get a better deal on your leafy greens and herbs.
Mhm.
They are so expensive in the store. They're not very nutritious, and you cannot get more nutritious than what you grow in your backyard, and you cannot get a better price. But I would warrant also that if you're really looking to save money, um, it's there's a curve, right? It's there's some cost involved with setting up a garden at first. And it's worthwhile, but it's also more than just saving money on groceries. It's the nutrition, it's the movement, but it's a lifestyle. You think about how people spend money at the gym, or they spend money for lessons, for their kids to take piano or dance or soccer, or all of the things that we have, that or travel, or I mean, we have lots of things that we invest in that add to our lives
Right.
and are wonderful. They're just a wonderful part of our lives. And so I do encourage people to think beyond just the price. You will save money on your lettuce and your herbs for sure. And if you can grow from your own seeds, that's great money. But
And
there's
once you
more
have
to it than that.
Yeah, of course. And then once you have it set up, it's like it's going to pay for itself and tenfold, over time as you
Over
plant.
time. And these gardens can last 15, 20 years easily. And really, I mean, beyond, but what we set up for people is meant to be a lifestyle, really. It's cool.
Absolutely. And just to your point too about, the rhythms of our life and what we do that we spend our money on and that we invest in, not only investing finances, but investing time in. And one of the things that just always brings me back and another reason why we're doing this project, not only to grow our own food and be able to nourish our family and potentially our neighbors and whoever else
Yeah.
are going to be helping nourish with this very big garden, is also to teach my daughter. This is I want her to know how to get her hands dirty. I want her to know where plants come from. I taught some nutrition classes over in Sycamore a few years back, and it was like I asked the kids, where do carrots grow? You said carrots is the point earlier, and it was like from the grocery store. Where do they grow? They grow in the ground. Like it just kind of blew my mind that knowledge and that education isn't shared with these kids at such a young age. So this is also really for generational, what I'll call generational wealth in health, and really being
Yeah.
able to
Yeah.
show her at age 3.5 that she
Yeah.
can grow things, that she can pick things, that she can nourish her body from our home, from our garden, and that she knows how they grow, and she can take that knowledge and be able to, expand upon her own experience with growing food for the long term. And who knows, maybe she'll be the next farmer. She'll be a hay farmer with dad and produce farmer with mom. But yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. It's where it starts. And I got off on a different direction, but I didn't finish that spring season ends like in our area right about May,
Mm,
June is kind of like we go from 34 degrees up to about 65 degrees. And
uh-huh.
then between 65 and 85 degrees is our warm season. Hot season would be above 85. In Chicago, we only have a couple weeks of hot season, really. So we don't have a full growing season to grow some of the things that grow great in Texas. We're just not going to maybe have the same success, or like to grow ginger or turmeric like you could down in Florida. You can grow it here, but it's a little bit harder. But we have that nice warm season during the summer, and then it goes back to cool, and we have this whole other growing season in the fall where you can grow into November. And October is when you put your garlic in, and it needs to go in over the whole winter. And if it's not in before winter, you're going to have really small bulbs. They have to go in about October, November for you to get the nice big garlic bulbs. So that's seasonal gardening. That's like my biggest, best tip that I think most people don't understand. And once you've got that, it kind of opens up a whole new world for you and for your children and generations.
And for both of those, points here, we've got the seasonal freebie that you offer, and then also the growing with littles. So getting your
Yeah.
garden, getting interested. So kind of talking to both those points. How about
Yes.
also as far as you were talking before about the raised garden beds and the smaller ones, how about also like in the difference where someone is planting in the earth and some things that maybe they want to look out for? And then I also want to follow that up with talking a little bit more about keeping the pests away, because I know
Okay.
you and I are both very aligned with doing this as organically as possible. We're like
Absolutely.
on our garden,
Absolutely.
chemicals in our bodies and our mouths. And yeah, so just
Yeah.
I'll let you take it away.
Right. So we have been sold at great expense to buy synthetic fertilizers and and pesticides.
Yeah.
People have spent billions of dollars to convince us that that is the best way to grow. And so if you learned that and that's what you're doing and growing that way, um, there's no shame in that because you have been told that's the way to do it. And probably nobody has come along to show you because once the soil becomes depleted, pests become more prolific. They disease on plants and pests are attracted to unhealthy plants. And so you can just see how it starts spinning the wrong direction.
Yeah.
When you have unhealthy soil, you have unhealthy plants, you have more pests, you have more weeds. It just is going the wrong direction. So we want to start spinning it this way, right? And that starts with the soil. And you're familiar with that too. So we want to get that soil healthy, and that doesn't happen overnight. It does if you have raised beds, you come in and you put in all healthy soil, and bam, it's like you're off to the races. But
Coming
if
in.
you're starting yeah, yours is there, right? It's just you and that's what is so fun because when you're trying to really start a new habit, you want some early successes. And so there's nothing better than starting with fresh soil and planting it and it's all mixed right and healthy. But you don't need to put the synthetic fertilizers in. Compost is gold. It is earth gold. And so, we can all be learning how to do our own compost if we want to, do a nice blend. And the trick about compost is it has to be blended properly. So if you want some tips on compost, send me a note on compost.
Or do
If
a whole video segment on just composting, literally. I've
you
heard this.
did,
No,
we
we could.
could,
We could do a
which I
whole
think,
compost segment. I've read and researched and looked at different things, and of course, like oxygen and nitrogen, and you're looking at all the different combinations of what you're putting into it. But you have
yeah.
a system with it. It's like taking your kitchen scraps from the scraps from the kitchen to then put into the compost, but you can't just keep throwing everything willy-nilly in there. You have to have a plan and a
That's
strategy.
your green matter. So your food breakdown is green, but you need brown matter. So you need like your leaves and your twig, like dry brown leaves, not green. You need some, like cardboard, and or paper strips or something to balance out the ash from the ash from your fire pit is brown matter. So those things balance the carbon and the nitrogen so you don't burn your plants. Because sometimes people put it on and they're like, oh, I killed my garden.
Yeah.
Well, that's because it was too heavy in nitrogen. So anyway, we can talk about that more, but compost is awesome. And you can make your own. You can do it with worms. That's also awesome. Or you can go to the store and you can buy it. And when you buy it, you want to get the kind that is not, um, filled with wood chips and material that still needs to break down because that's going to pull more nitrogen out of the soil. You want something that is maybe like mushroom compost is great. And you may find some blends like it's hard to find just straight mushroom compost, particularly in this area because the mushroom factory or like not factory, but the mushroom growing place just shut down that was near us in Princeton. And so it moved to Indiana. So it's a little bit harder to find, but I've been finding some good blends. Like at the growing place in Naperville, I just saw some bags that I would recommend. And so if you're interested in knowing like, what's good, what's not good, that's something we can talk about too.
Yeah. Right.
So, okay, so the soil, and I'm sorry, I can talk forever on this. I get so
Yeah,
excited.
me too. The second part was just like, obviously the alignment piece of not putting chemicals, and you had some really great recommendations on what we could do to kill off some of the weeds, like even just using vinegar. I have vinegar everywhere in my house. Vinegar, baking soda, it's like all I use
Awesome.
to clean
Baking
my house.
soda.
I
Yes.
walk out of the store with a big thing of vodka and vinegar, and they're like, "Ah, party and what?" I'm like, cleaning party." Um, I
Yeah.
think to your tip with that is you don't need these fertilizers. You don't need these chemically laden pesticide, all of these different things that people put on their gardens, and especially like Roundup, weed killer. Oh my gosh, please don't use Roundup with the glyphosate and how high of glyphosate we're trying to get out of our soils right now and out of our water systems, or water supply. But all that to be said is, tell us a little bit more about vinegar, how you might use that, and then kind of how you might pair things to complement to keep the pests at bay.
Sure. So, and vinegar is going to acidify your soil, and there are some plants that would like that, like our berries. That we're talking about berries, like a more acidic soil. I think there are better soil amendments than vinegar. If you are looking for an acidic soil, like elemental sulfur or pine needles and things like that. But if you are, vinegar is a great weed killer. There are different strengths. There's household vinegar and then there's horticultural vinegar. If you're using horticultural vinegar to kill really bad, big bad weeds, make sure that you're using eye protection and skin protection because it's kind of caustic. So you want to be protected when you do that. But I have recipes for like regular DIY weed killer and then more of a heavy duty strong one that I could share with you when your community. In terms of companion planting, so some plants just so when when we think about bugs in the garden, we think, "Ooh, no, we don't want bugs." Actually, we do. We really do want bugs, but we want the right kinds of bugs. So there are certain kinds of like if you grow a lot of brassicas, which would be like your kale and your cabbage and your Brussels sprouts and your broccoli and your cauliflower, those are brassicas, and they like uh, it, not what they like. They attract cabbage moths.
Mm.
And cabbage moths will come and they will lay their eggs on the brassicas, and the little caterpillars come out and eat up those plants, and it looks like Swiss cheese overnight.
Yes.
And so if you plant, so this gets to the concept of monocropping versus intensive planting, which is what I teach. Farmers plant like a whole field of cabbage, right? You've got cabbage, rows and rows and rows of cabbage. Well, if you're a cabbage moth, what better place than to find a whole field of cabbage, right? All you have to do is just hop, to the next little plant and you are at a buffet all day long because that's what they need to eat. But if you break it up so that you have like a cabbage next to beans, and then you have, some cucumbers, and you have some fennel, and you have some carrots, and you have some beets, and you have some lettuce, and you have all of these different things. First of all, those plants all take something different from the soil,
Mhm.
and they all give something back to the soil differently.
Mhm.
So we've heard a little bit about the importance of rotating crops. Maybe some of your community, maybe you're familiar with crop rotation.
Yes.
Well, intensive planting is kind of like continual crop rotation
Hmm.
because you're planting in the spring one thing, and you've got all these other things right next to each other, giving to the soil and taking from the soil differently.
Mhm. Smart.
And then um, and they also attract different kinds of beneficial insects. So, for example, like nasturtium is an herb that we can grow. It has beautiful flowers. It can climb up on a trellis, or it can be in a bush variety with red and yellow and gold, just beautiful flowers. Well, it attracts aphids.
Hmm.
And so so it's a trap crop, right? The aphids are all going to go to the nasturtiums and they're going to leave your other plants alone
Ah, yeah, that makes sense. Perfect.
because this is like a buffet. So there are a couple different things. There are some concepts. There's the diversity of planting so that you don't have a monocrop where one insect or, the cabbage moths can just take out everything.
Yeah.
They have to go a little farther to find another brassica in that garden. They might get a little lost. They might go somewhere else.
Mhm.
But also you want to have the things that are giving back to the soil and then the things that are attracting. For example, what's a plant I that mentioned the nasturtiums, dill,
Oh, I was gonna say
uh,
Mary.
rosemary, cilantro. Like cilantro attracts, um, protects your potatoes because the potato beetle doesn't like cilantro. So there may be a reason you might not like cilantro, but you might want to grow
We'll
cilantro.
plant it and we're gonna give it to the goats.
Well, that's the thing is, you know what, and that's just learning to think a little bit more broadly than just what you like to eat, because there's some things that you put in your garden because it's going to keep the harmful insects away. Garlic, chives, onions, the herbs are fantastic for guarding your plants from the kinds of insects that are going to eat them all up. So it's not that you won't get any insects. Sometimes you'll maybe pick them off yourself. There are some DIY sprays that are safe to put on your plants. Uh, like garlic, spraying garlic solution with garlic and water. But really, you just do not want to go with the synthetics, and you don't need to do the fertilizers. Stick with your compost and your companion planting and your diversity, and you will build a healthy ecosystem over time
Yeah.
that pest problems just aren't, it's just not that big of a problem.
Yeah. That's awesome. There was this documentary, I think it's called The Big Little Farm. Don't quote me on
I
it.
love that. I
That it's
love
called,
that show.
yeah, and it's like they were talking all about the different ecosystems and how this supports this, and you plant this next to this, and then you got the ducks eating the snails, and you got, all these different components that are working together. Because just like
Yeah.
the body, it's not organ by organ, it's not system by system, it is one cohesive unit. And
Hmm.
everything goes in here in terms of our gardening and how the soil works with the sun, works with the water, works with the nutrients, works with the insects, the pesticides, like all, sorry, not pesticides, the insects to keep away, anything that would be harmful to our plants. And
Yeah.
it's just really fascinating. Like, why are we not taught this? This is a whole other topic. Why are we not taught this in school? Like, why is this not a part of the general education? Same thing with hormones with the human body, but like, why is this not something that more people know about? And this is why I think your job and your role in our community is so, so important. Why I'm encouraging every single person that I know, all my community members to get in touch with you because they need to know, even if it's just to get a little more educated, even if it's to do one of your plant education hours or go shopping together, or maybe it's just like, let's talk about this intensive planting and complementary planting and how this all feeds into this ecosystem that we're talking about. I think it's so, so, so valuable. Just like how I think every person should get a stool sample at one point in their life, every person should grow food at one point in their life. If you're not doing it all season long or
Yeah.
year after year, you're doing it at one point because you need to understand how you're also contributing to the pollinators, the bees.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
You can speak to that.
Which are out. I mean, I've seen them, and we spent some time out in our yard cleaning up this past weekend, and I saw the little bees, just going along the ground, and I was so excited to see that life. Our yard, we have hummingbirds and butterflies and bees, and all of these things are here, and we enjoy them so much. They add so much to our enjoyment of the yard. But like learning when to clean up your yard
Hmm.
instead of there's fall cleanup, but if you do the fall cleanup, then there's not the habitat for those. There are a lot of bees and wasps and things like that that are shelter that are important for our yard. Parasitic wasps, we think, oh, wasps are terrible. No, parasitic wasps kill cabbage worms. So like we have to have those. Those are important. And so we want to draw those to our yard and letting the leaves and the compost be down on our beds over the winter actually provides a place for them, a good ecosystem and a habitat for them. So that's important. Or um, and you, when do you know that it's okay? Well, when you see the daffodils coming up and you start to see the dandelions coming up, and you're like, oh, okay, now it's time I can clean up my yard because the bees are starting to wake up and they're gonna get out there.
Oh, is that
This
it? That's
past weekend,
really good tip. The dandelions are perfect.
yeah.
You can clean up your.
Well, I mean, my husband really likes how it looks and I like it too. I mean, it looks nice all winter long when it's all clean and stuff. But I was just at a house this past weekend. I did a garden consultation with a family. A friend of mine just moved into a new home, and the people who owned the home before her were gardeners. And so she said, I don't know what any of this stuff is. Could you come out and just walk the yard and tell me what I have? And so it was amazing. I mean, they've got like a phenomenal setup, and I'm so excited to help her, learn what to do with all of that. But there was because they moved over the winter, there was a lot of leaves and brush there on the ground. And I said, hey, you know what? This has been housing a whole bunch of really good stuff for your garden, little critters that are and breaking down into the soil, enriching your soil. This is great. Now it's time you can clean it up, but no worries that it was here. There was a good purpose for it over the winter.
Has its benefits too. And one more point to before when you talked about dandelions, people, so I don't know how dandelions got such a bad rep. Like people wanting to kill
Oh.
the dandelions. I'm like, they're beautiful, keep the dandelions, and they're so, so healthy for our digestive system. So like last year we had a little garden event with my daughter, and we went around, we collected, all the dandelions when they were ready to make some dandelion tea and dandelion jelly and bake dandelions into little cookies. And it's like they're so healthy for our digestive system, and people look at them as a weed. And I feel like there could be so many things that people are looking at as just weeds or don't have the knowledge or understanding on what to do with these plants, but they have their purpose. They have, again, in building that unique communication with the ecosystem of connecting the soil, the plants, the sun, the water, the whole shebang, right? And so I think there's so, like, again, you're just an amazing resource for people, and everybody has to get in contact with you and at least do a 15-minute consult, because whether you are a beginner, whether you're a more advanced gardener, or whether you're wanting to figure out how to do this differently, or if
Yeah.
you've said you've had a brown black thumb in the past where you nothing grows, there's a way to do it synergistically where we can communicate with again, the soils and the waters and the plants, but also that Corey can teach you. She can show you how you can do this, whether you have a small patio, whether you have lots of acreage to work with, but being able to grow your food is so powerful, and everyone should learn how to do this and to be able to implement it in your own home. So thank you
And
so, so much for your time.
oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I just thank you so much for introducing me to your community, and I look forward to connecting with any and everybody who wants to connect. Um, you know, we don't when we if we want to learn the piano, we take lessons.
Mhm.
Even with running a business, we get a business coach. We don't expect ourselves to be able to do so many things we understand that we need to learn. We go to school, we go to college, why? Right? Because we knew that we needed some education. And this has not been a part of most of our growing up and our education. It should be. I'm reaching out to a lot of homeschool communities to kind of start changing that.
Awesome.
And so we do some programs for kids, but I I just want to give everybody that permission to be a beginner, to grow, to learn, and to grow with someone else, because it's better, it's more fun than doing it by yourself.
Absolutely. Beautifully, beautifully said. So to get in touch with Corey, I'll put the link in here. It's going to be going to her website and click on the Connect tab. It'll lead you to a little questionnaire that she's got in there, and you can just fill out what you're most interested in learning more about or what you'd like to connect on. She also has some free forms that she's willing to share with us. And all you have to do is reach out again, write on that, that intake form for her, or send an email. Corey, what's the email? If they were to email you and ask you for forms, would be the best one.
Corey at Connected Gardener. So it's CORRIE at connectedgardener.com.
Perfect. Well, hopefully you'll get a flood of people coming to you.
That would be wonderful.
And thank you if you watched to the end. Thank you for being with us and being part of this conversation and this journey. And I'll be highlighting our path along the way and what our garden turns into with our raised beds. So stay tuned for our reveal and our project and how everything will come to fruition here soon.
All right.